Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Welcome back to the show and Happy New Year, Jordan.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, Jim, and all your listeners out there. I wish I could tell you that 2019 was going to be cheaper for us than 2018, but looks like tax hikes and red tape and all sorts of economic conditions are conspiring to make things more expensive.
Now, for contractors who have a payroll of $500,000 or more, what kind of challenges are they facing in the new year?
Yeah, well, today they have to start paying the new employer health tax, which is a new payroll tax brought in by the NDP government. So, to give a bit of background, for years, British Columbia had this medical services premium tax, which essentially, was about $75 a head per month that some employers paid, but often was paid by individuals. The government collected that for years. It constantly went up. And then about 2-3 years ago, after a lot of work by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, of which I was a part for many years, they announced that the MSP would be cut in half and eventually phased out. That was the BC Liberal government. The NDP went along with that, although the NDP have since caused a little bit of a problem. Instead of actually getting rid of the second half of the tax, they brought in a brand new tax, this employer health tax, in order to get more. So for businesses, if you were paying the MSP for your employees, this year you'll pay the MSP plus you'll pay this new employer health tax. And if you were a company that didn't pay MSP, you also have this new employer health tax. No matter how you cut it, it's more expensive to employ people. And when it's more expensive to employ people, guess what? Fewer people get employed.
So how much does it cost per employee for a contract company?
I don't have the breakdown per employee because it depends. It's a percentage of the overall payroll. Oh. But, you look at some of these, just take a look at everything from municipalities on down. So municipalities are kind of the first ones to sound the alarm on this because they, of course, are a huge purchaser of labor. You think of all of your workers, all of your parks workers, police officers, all of those people are on a payroll, and now municipalities have to pay the tax. So for some cities, it's more than $1 million. I know in Nanaimo, where there's a big by-election coming up, it's basically a 1% tax increase in property taxes just to cover the city's portion of employer health tax. In Vancouver, I believe in Surrey, it's a couple $1 million. The township of Langley, where I live, is about $1 million. This is, very significant amounts of money. But you take it down to even smaller companies, contractors of a few people, a $500,000 payroll is not hard to get to, in this construction market. So if you have a roofing company and, you build and maintain roofs, you have, let's say, someone in the office working, and then you have 5 or 6 roofers, you're definitely over that $500,000 pay threshold. And, what that means is you're paying a percentage to the government in this health tax. And so for some companies, it'll be as low as a few $1,000s, but for many, it'll be in the tens of thousands. And for the larger companies, hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Now,
haven't studies been found that payroll taxes are job-killing taxes?
Yeah, payroll taxes are widely agreed are the worst kind of taxes to have if you're trying to generate employment. What the NDP are betting is that, hey, we're at fairly low levels of unemployment. They're basically looking to put people out of work in order to get more tax money. We think this is a foolish gambit by them. We should be celebrating the fact that we have almost full employment, that, if you need a job, if you're looking for a job, that there is work for you somewhere in this province, instead of doing what this is, which is constricting the job market. It just makes sense, right? Like if you're a company with a payroll of $450,000, you're not going to want to add another employee until you absolutely have to, because, the cost isn't just the extra, $50,000 or $60,000 in wages. It's the cost that, trips over when you hit that $500,000 mark. Or, if you're a company and you were planning to hire someone this year, but you have a new $90,000 a year tax bill, well, you're paying that instead of hiring that extra body. So yeah, it's bad for employees. People sometimes say, well, I used to pay MSP and now I don't have to, so everything's great. Yeah, maybe it's better for your pocket in the short term, but in the long term, it's bad because you're working harder at work. You're not getting the kind of resources that you need, and God forbid you may actually lose your job because because companies just don't have infinite amounts of money.
Well, would it be agreed that the MSP fee, the way it was applied, really wasn't a fair tax because Jimmy Pattison, the billionaire, paid the same as a person making minimum wage?
Oh yeah, the MSP was a terribly flawed tax, and that's why I fought so long to get rid of it. Some people would defend it as an insurance premium, but it really wasn't that because it didn't matter if you were, a fit athlete like Henrik Sedin or if you were, a slob who didn't get off the couch and had recurring health issues. You paid the same tax. So it really was an insurance premium. And, it certainly wasn't a progressive tax because, as you mentioned, if you made $30,001 a year or if you made $3 million a year, you paid the same tax, which violates all the progressive rules. So it's no, surprise that we were able to build public support to get rid of the tax. To the point where, and this is like a real feather in the cap of the CTF and the work that we did there, every single political party, the Greens, the BC Conservatives, the BC Liberals, and the BC NDP all promised to get rid of the medical services premium tax in the last election. These are parties who can't even agree that the sky is blue. They may not have agreed on how to get rid of the tax, but they all agreed it had to go.
So how do other provinces pay their medical bills if they don't have a medical services premium or an employer's health tax?
Well, what they do is they use their existing corporate income taxes, their personal income taxes, all the other tax tools at their disposal, their sales tax, things like that. And then some of these provinces, like the Maritimes and Quebec, use equalization payments from the Western provinces to do the same. It's difficult. It's about priorities, right? If the government wanted to prioritize $1 billion savings to taxpayers, it could. This is a government that's increased taxes by $5.5 billion in its first 18 months in power. That's a lot of tax money coming in. They've spent virtually, all of it and more, to the point where now they, what was once a healthy $3 billion a year surplus is down to $1 billion, and, frankly, will probably disappear in the years to come. So it's disappointing because, we wanted to get rid of this tax, but we certainly didn't want to replace it with something even worse for the economy, as this payroll tax will prove to be.
Jordan, do you have any suggestions on what they should be doing then to make sure the healthcare system has adequate funds?
Well, the first step is we should probably take a look at the healthcare system and make sure we're actually, we're actually being, smart with it. The healthcare system spends about $20 billion a year in British Columbia. It is hard to imagine that every single dollar of that $20 billion is being spent efficiently and effectively. And even if there's 5% waste, you're talking about $500 million. You're talking about $1 billion. So, it's a significant amount of money that would be worth investigating. No one really wants to dig into it because, and I used to feel this when I was a taxpayer advocate at the CTF, you don't want to mess around with doctors and nurses because you just don't know healthcare. It's a different kind of beast than other ways governments spend money. But there is certainly growing concern that, maybe not every dollar is spent efficiently. Maybe there are ways that we can, save money by shifting away from, the kind of the hospital focus model to more preventative and other healthcare, smaller scale healthcare models. We should be testing those and trying those out. There's a great book by Jeffrey Simpson, the Globe and Mail columnist, called Critical Condition, where he looks at our healthcare system compared not to the United States, but to other publicly funded healthcare systems in Europe, including the NHS in Britain. And he says that, we're paying Cadillac prices for Chevrolet results. And that line has always stuck with me. It has always made me wonder why ministers don't maybe take a harder look at what government is doing in the healthcare spending to see if there are savings to be had there.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, there's going to be a by-election in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. Why is that of interest to the Contractors Association?
Well, I think this one's of interest to every British Columbian because if the BC Liberals were able to snag this seat, and, it is a safe NDP seat, but if the BC Liberals were able to go in there and upset them and win this seat, you would have a 43-43 tie between the BC Liberals and the NDP Green Coalition, with Speaker Darryl Plecas as an independent casting the deciding vote on every piece of legislation. Essentially what you would be doing is triggering a spring election because the legislature just would not be able to function long term at a 43-43 tie. There are times where the Speaker steps out, doesn't vote, where other people are in the chair, and you'd see various pieces of legislation fail. So it would become unworkable, and you'd see an election fairly quickly. So some of the Victoria Press Gallery folks have called this the mother of all by-elections. The NDP are the favorites. They won that riding by about 15 points last time around. But at the same time, by-elections can be a funny beast. The NDP did win Chilliwack, which is BC Liberal heartland once. Although you do wonder, this is a by-election with so much on the line that these parties are going to do everything they can to win it.
Do the Liberals have a shot, and what issues are they looking at to be trigger points?
Yeah, well, the last Main Street poll that was done there showed they were within the margin of error. The NDP had a slight lead, but it was a couple of points and within the margin of error. They certainly have an excellent candidate, Tony Harris, well-known person throughout the community, philanthropist from a long line of family business owners, deep Nanaimo roots, young family guy. It was named to the 40 under 40 business leaders on Vancouver Island. He's an excellent candidate in that riding. The NDP are recycling an MP who actually is from outside the riding. She lives on Galliano Island, which isn't part of this particular riding. So you wonder if that is possibly could hurt her. There are always people who don't like to see folks jumping from political job to political job. So that's a little bit of an opening. And then the Greens have a very surprisingly strong candidate, Michelle Ney, who's the former mayor who's the daughter of the former mayor, the famous Frank Ney, who was a big, part of Nanaimo lore. He's the guy who really got the bathtub races going. He was famous for dressing as a pirate at those bathtub races. There's a statue of the pirate mayor on the waterfront in Nanaimo. If you've ever been to Nanaimo, no doubt your kids have climbed all over that statue, or pretended to be a pirate like Frank Ney. So you do wonder if that could cause a bit of a vote split between the NDP Greens, and it might allow Tony Harris to sneak for the win.
I'm wondering if the MLA or for Nanaimo would ask for the bathtub races to be reinstated between there and Vancouver.
It's part of the, I can kind of dimly remember them, although I was probably too young to really understand the just how crazy that is. But that would be something to see. We spent a lot of time this past month, probably past couple of months since Leonard Krog, the former NDP MLA, resigned and ran or won the mayoralty of Nanaimo. We spent a lot of time talking to our Nanaimo members, and there are some pretty significant concerns in Nanaimo around economic development. The NDP, because it's such a safe NDP riding, the NDP have taken it for granted for many years. They haven't put the kind of investment into Nanaimo that some people expected. There's a lot of problems with homeless camps, for example, in Nanaimo, which is not uncommon in municipalities, but certainly, when you have the levers of government, you would have thought the NDP government would have done more on that. The employer health tax is a big deal in Nanaimo because you have a lot of small businesses just clinging to the edge. And, even if they're too small to pay their own employer health tax, they're seeing their property taxes go up by 1% just to pay for this tax. You see a lot of empty storefronts. Housing prices have gone up. You've seen people who want to downsize because of these, kind of restrictive and economically damaging taxes and regulations brought in by the NDP. Now they can't get as much for their house as they had hoped. Their nest egg has evaporated a little bit. That's a big concern to the Nanaimo residents. So there are some openings there for Tony Harris and the BC Liberals. The question is, can they stitch together enough of a coalition to, get them to the 42, 43, 44% support that they would need to win that riding. Oh, and we should also mention Prop Rep failed there. Despite the NDP, supporting it, the Greens supporting it, Prop Rep did go down there 56-44, which is another sign that maybe that riding is a little bit hungrier for something different than the NDP, than what the NDP have served.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, going back to the referendum in BC on whether they wanted representational voting, why do you think it failed, and do you think they're going to try to revive this again? Because it seems to me every time they bring it up and there's a vote on it, it's rejected by about 61% of the people.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. This is a boutique political issue that's only cared about by a very small percentage of people in British Columbia. When the NDP first took power, ICBA, we did a survey of British Columbians on a number of issues. One thing we asked was, what's your most significant issue for the new government? Like, what's the thing you want the government to work on? Fewer than 1 in 100 said electoral reform. And yet, $15 million and all this time and effort was spent on this thing, basically to try to reel or keep the Greens in the fold long enough for the NDP to take the Premier's office. So, you're right. I think this thing is dead. I think it's dead for at least 10 years. My hope is that it's as radioactive as, the HST is, not because the HST should be radioactive. I mean, it's decent tax policy with some tweaks, but, it should not, now that the public has spoken, it should not be circled back to anytime soon. It's a big black eye for the NDP, who put tons of resources into it, who basically stacked the deck to try to get the answer they want. It's a huge loss for the BC Green Party, which must now face its own mortality and wonder if 3 seats is its high water mark. It's a huge victory for Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberals, who led the fight against it, and you'll notice that more than 500,000 people voted for first past the post and that did not mark the second part of that ballot. That was an initiative launched by the BC Liberals, the one and done, that seemed to certainly have taken root. So, there was lots of interesting kind of storylines that spun out of Prop Rep. But the main one is, let's quit talking about it. We've got one of the best, we've got the best system in the world for electing folks. Are there things that can be done to improve it? Of course there are, but Prop Rep was not going to fix any of the problems that its supporters claimed it would.
Do you think people were worried that fringe parties would start to play a big role in government?
Absolutely. Week after week after week, we saw news out of Europe, supposedly, progressive, wonderful, inclusive Europe. You'd see Angela Merkel having to work her way around genuine neo-Nazis in her legislature in order to get a governing coalition. We saw Sweden without a government for months. Northern Ireland's been without a government for more than a year. Belgium without a government for a year. You see all these, fascist and neo-Nazi groups, anti-immigration groups taking just enough of the power to become a problem in all these different places. And I think British Columbia said, whoa, we do not want that there. We do not want that here. It's one thing if you can win a riding and have a voice, but it's a whole nother thing just to happen to, luck onto 5% of the vote. Let's not open the door to that. And, that was one of my big concerns about prop rep. The more you read about proportional representation democracies, the more you realize how often these leaders have to sell their souls to very destructive forces in order to be able to form a government. And that's not good for anyone.
Now, it seems to me in Switzerland it works, but it's a very tiny place, and they also have referenda on just about everything, so people have a lot more of a direct say in what the government does.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Switzerland has that, completely unique to Switzerland referenda. It's a lot less representative democracy and more about, the people making their voices known. Unless you're going to completely redo the entire system, you're not going to have that here. So the other problem I think for this was so many of these rules were going to be set out by the politicians after the fact. And everyone knows that politicians can't help themselves. They're going to set the rules that are best for their party and their political futures. The NDP aren't going to do anything to help the BC Liberals gain power and vice versa. So, that I think stuck in the craw of a lot of people as well because they found it unfair and not quite, not the way that you want to see your democracy run.
Going on to another issue, SkyTrain in Surrey out to Langley. Is Doug McCallum, the new mayor of Surrey, being strung out here or being criticized for a plan that he may not be able to finance?
Yeah, I think Doug McCallum's being unfairly criticized here. I think Doug McCallum at the end of 2019 is going to be smirking at some of these media and other mayor naysayers about what he's able to extract for Surrey. Doug McCallum knows Surrey. Doug McCallum ran in Surrey, won this election based on two things: a police force for Surrey, a city police force, and changing that light rail to SkyTrain. And, I believe that he will be able to figure out the funding to get that SkyTrain all the way to Langley. And I think he'll do it because there's a federal election in the middle of this year. Surrey is chock full of swing ridings. We talk about them a lot provincially. They're just as swingy in the federal election. I think it's the Newton riding that's gone back and forth between the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Liberals multiple times in the last 2 decades. Whoever wants to win British Columbia has got to win in Surrey. So, if you're Justin Trudeau and Andrew Scheer and Jagmeet Singh, when you come to British Columbia and you go to Surrey to campaign, and you get asked, they're $1 billion short or whatever the amount will be for SkyTrain to Langley, what are you going to do about it? We all know what they're going to do. They're going to say, yeah, we're going to stroke a $500 million check to help cover that shortfall because, transit infrastructure is important. It's important to meeting our climate goals, and it's important to the people of Surrey. And McCallum can go to these guys and say, I know it's important to the people of Surrey because I wouldn't be in this mayor's chair if it wasn't. So when that happens, the pressure will shift completely onto John Horgan because you can bet Andrew Wilkinson will come out at some point and say he'd fund the provincial share to Langley, and the pressure will be squarely on John Horgan to, backtrack on all the comments he made to all the provincial media that he wasn't going to do it, and instead to go for it because he has to save his 4 seats in the swing ridings of Surrey and Delta.
Now, Doug McCallum has said he isn't going to go forward with a community center or hire more police officers. How does that stand with his campaign promise to help fight crime when, a community center to keep the kids busy might keep them out of the hands of gangs?
Yeah, I definitely think. I talked to some folks from Surrey. One of my weird side things is I'm on the Langley Minor Hockey Association executive. We're actually very concerned about the Cloverdale Rec Center being canceled or being slowed down because Cloverdale is a huge purchaser, their hockey association, of ice in Langley. It's actually making ice for Langley kids more expensive. So, we want to get that ice rink up and running so we get Cloverdale out of Langley and back into Cloverdale, and have more ice available for Langley kids. Talking to the mayor's office, it sounds to me like, this is a 1-year only delay, that they're still committed to that Cloverdale ice arena, and that perhaps as soon as the spring, we'll hear an announcement on that. So, I haven't talked to the mayor directly. These are people close to the mayor. I'm hopeful that that's correct, and certainly, something that, I would encourage, as Cloverdale is a massively, wildly growing community. And some of that money that's been invested there in development cost charges should flow back to the residents who are living there now.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.